Note taking is something that I think is really overstressed as far as how much people should do it. I think we put too much emphasis on that. But then I think how to do it effectively is understressed. Does that make sense? Okay. Shh. All right, so what I mean by that is that how many of you have been in situations where you're not sure what to write and you just write way too much? Yeah? Okay, so what's happened to me as when I was a high school student and when I first got to college, I knew that you're supposed to take notes. I didn't really know how. I knew I was supposed to write them down, so it was frustrating for me. I write really slowly. If anyone here doesn't write quickly, and I would be writing as fast as I could to keep up, and my hand and arm would be cramping, and I'd be getting frustrated, and I'd work like crazy to write it all down, and we'd get to the end, and I'd be like, what the heck did we just talk about? I have no idea. Because I spent all my time just trying to write that down that I completely missed a lot of the important things that were in it.
That's how it is in my college class right now. Like,
just trying to keep up.
Horsemanship class, and it's just nothing but like writing. It's so frustrating.
Well, what I ended up doing was they came out with this like fancy computer that had 4 entire gigabytes of data you could store on it. Sony Vaio. It was only like $2,000. I mean, woo! And it had 4 gigabytes of memory. Or for the hard drive, obviously, not memory. The RAM was significantly slower. Had a nice little spot for like the mini floppy disks. No. This was like 2001. Yeah.
I remember floppy disks.
Yeah. So what happened is I got that because I could type really quickly, and I would go in, and the step for me was I would just pay attention now, and I'd type everything down. I wouldn't really filter it. No filter. Just throw it on there. And then when I found what actually worked for me was I would type it all down. We'd have an assessment coming up or a test or a midterm or something like that. So I'd go to the library and just print it all out for like 3 cents a page. So I'd print it out. Actually, before I would print it out, I'd take that massive mess of things, and at the end of the class, before my next one began, before I left, I'd take 5 minutes and try to organize it as best I could. So I'd try to put like big ideas with like Roman numerals, and then you put all the bullets and letters underneath of it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it kind of worked for me. And then I would go print it out. So when it came time to study, I'd print it out. I'd take a highlighter, and I'd go through there and be like, all right, now out of this massive jumble of several days of notes, what out of this was actually important? So I go through and I just highlight the important stuff. And then instead of carrying around like a big thing of notes, I took like colored note cards and numbered them and then just started using those. And what I found out in the process were a few really important things about me. First of all, how I learned, I found that out. I also found out that I have an eidetic memory. So if you have an eidetic memory, it can be everything or selective. Mine is kind of selective. But what that means is that when I would recall information, I wouldn't recall information necessarily that I heard. I would recall the actual information, how I viewed it. So at the end, when I would write them down, I could tell you what card number it was, what color it was, whether I wrote in cursive or print, and what color the ink was. I could tell you that because when I would recall it, I wouldn't recall like these ideas out of thin air. I would recall actually reading it off of my card, which is like symptomatic of people who have eidetic memories. So I found out that worked for me. And the ironic part was that when I went through all those steps where I just mass put everything down, then I organized it, then I printed it off and evaluated it, what was important, and then I wrote it on the cards. I put those on a keychain, and then I never had to study them. Because through that whole process, by the time it came time to study, I knew all that stuff that was on there. And what I actually put on the cards were shorthand symbols and just memory cues of all the other stuff. I didn't write everything out on the card. I would have filled the entire thing. It would have been too hard to remember. So that's what works for me. That doesn't mean it works for you. You may have a different way of doing things. I assumed that everyone knew how to take Cornell Notes, and I found out that some students do, some don't. The ones that I talked to so far today generally have had negative experiences with it, and I don't know if it's because they weren't sure the purpose of them, how to do that, or if they were being made to use them in a way that was not effective for them. All right, so I'm going to this is what I would recommend trying just to see if it works for you, because I know it works for this assignment, or for this activity with the parts of speech. And they are things that you'll want to know. Our next assessment as far as product assessment will be parts of speech, and then we'll have one over the Anglo-Saxons, and that'll be our 3 big assessments of this grading period. All right, so you definitely want to know these. Does anyone have a piece of paper I can use real quick, and I'll show you how to set this up? So ye old how-to for Cornell Notes is, oh, thoughtful. The easy way to do it is to get on Classroom and print off the templates I put on there. There are 2 templates. You can pick which one best fits you. Or the even easier way, if you don't want to get on there, is to make your own. And what you want to do is you take this and you fold this in about 1/3.
Yes, you can use my desk.
Well, you're welcome. I'm folding this for you. So if you notice there, this length is about the same as this. Now when I open it, it's about 1/3 of the page. Okay, and then the second thing that I want to do is I want to take this at the bottom. Yeah, I want to fold it up so there's just enough for like 2 to 3 sentences to write at the bottom. And then when I open it, I can take a pen or something like that and make these lines. This is what I end up with, those 3 shapular things. There you go. So that's what I end up with for my shape for Cornell Notes. Here's how to use it. There are 2 main ways to do it. There are a lot of ways to do it, but there are 2 main ways that I've found to be useful in high school or college settings. One is the splash method. That means that when someone is speaking, you don't know what's important yet. So they're coming up to talk. You're really not sure what they're talking about. They don't say, hey, I'm going to come here and talk today about for blank. They just get up and start talking. We're talking about blank today. All right, so in the splash method, you take this big square rectangle, and you just write down anything you think might be important. You don't know if it's important yet till they're done talking, but you put everything in here. Then when they're done speaking, you circle the big ideas or the sentences or the things that you thought were really important, and you draw arrows over to categories over here for them. So if this was a big idea and it ended up talking about nouns, I could draw an arrow to nouns here and put nouns up there. Does that make sense? At the bottom with my summary, I always want to do somewhere between 2 sentences to a paragraph. I like 2 to 3 sentences, and I generally try to summarize in a sentence, what it was about, okay, why it was important, and what I can do with it. So those 3 things really tell me a lot, and I don't need to write on forever. So what was it about? Why was it important, and what can I do with it? I put that in the summary. The second way to do this, which would probably work better today, is when you do have some type of an outline. Today we're going to be learning about, or reviewing, we're going to be reviewing the 8 parts of speech so we can use them in our writing effectively. So I would know over here, hey, I'm going to have Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I probably even know what they are. So when you know them, you can put the Roman numeral, and then beside it, in this area, you can write what's important. Again, you want to keep this small. You don't want to put a ton of stuff there. But use shorthand, use symbols, write in a way that makes sense to you. If you struggle with one part of speech, put several examples in an example sentence. If you're good to go on noun and you don't need any help with noun, then don't put much by noun. Right? And that's one way to do it. And then at the bottom, you do the same thing. So those are the 2 main methods. I'd recommend trying it, see even if it works for you. But that should be your goal as we learn these things, especially early in the year. Try to figure out how you can take notes and how you can study. And my recommendation would not be write every single thing down all the time, because they have printers now. Just print it off from somewhere. Don't waste all your time handwriting everything down and missing what you're supposed to be paying attention to. All right, any questions?